Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. We've got another amazing guest for you. His name is Mr. Reuben Swartz. Reuben owns a company that actually specializes in sales proposals. And we're going to talk a lot about what makes proposals, I'll say perfect, right? And what doesn't make them perfect, the do's and don'ts. So many people are putting proposals out so early in the process, and they're commoditizing their own value when they're doing that. So Reuben and I are talking about how not to do that and how to maximize that so it leads to the ultimate conversion of your sale. So he's very specialized, very focused, professional in this area. So I know you're going to get a lot out of this. Let's go talk to Reuben right now. Reuben, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Doug, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Reuben, you want to tell people what you do right out of the gate? Because I know you and I are going to talk about proposals and why they're so important, but give them a little background.
Sure. So I accidentally built the fun anti-CRM for independent consultants that I wished I'd had when I was struggling to use enterprise CRMs like my really big, really successful clients. I'm also the host and chief nerd on the Sales for Nerds podcast, which is how Doug and I got introduced. Doug's got a great episode on common sales mistakes that you guys should check out. I'm sure he'll have a link to it in the show notes for this episode.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let's jump to proposals because a lot of people, they don't even understand what a proposal is. In my humble opinion, now that might sound arrogant, but the reality is so many times I see people just like, hey, I'll send you a proposal. And why? You know what I mean? Like they haven't even, there's no need established on the whole process. So they kind of go into it. So when should one use a proposal? When should one not use a proposal?
Well, I think the easiest way to think about it is when a prospect asks for a proposal and you have the right information to create a compelling proposal, that's when you commit to creating a proposal and sending one. All too often, people send proposals without being asked. And then they wonder, gosh, why am I not getting a positive response to this junk mail? Or someone asks for a proposal, but it's either a polite way to brush someone off, or they are genuinely interested, but you don't have the right information yet to craft a compelling proposal. So make sure that you've got those two things. You've got someone who wants to receive it, who has given you the information you need to actually do it. Like if you go to your doctor, the doctor doesn't start pitching you on a surgery right away. They kind of investigate what's going on and trying to figure out what the appropriate next step might be. And when you say, yes, gosh, the knee surgery sounds good, how do we get that scheduled? Then they start moving into the specifics of what a particular operation might look like. So don't jump the gun is probably the real short way to say what I said in so many other words.
Well, a lot of times I have found when people are doing what you were just saying, you know, they're kind of shopping it out. So there's either one of two things going on. They're shopping out, right? So they're kind of using proposals as a request for bid or request for proposal, if you will, without actually saying that. Or B, they really aren't that interested in what that person's saying to them. And it's their polite way of not saying, hey, I really don't have any interest in what you're doing here. So send me a proposal. I'll look it over. I'll pass it up to the other people, whatever it might be. And, and then also there's legitimate proposals, right? It's just like, hey, I am interested. So let's say somebody says that to somebody, yeah, just send me a proposal over. I'll take a look at the numbers. What would you recommend them doing? Do they just send it over, or do they ask some qualifying questions, or what would be the better path for them?
Well, I think something to remember as a salesperson, as an independent consultant, as somebody who is crafting this proposal, you don't work for the person asking for the proposal, right? They don't get to say, have a proposal on my desk by the end of the week, and you just have to snap to it. And I made this mistake so many times. So I say this with lots of love to people who might be kicking themselves for doing that. It's your job as the professional. Think of like the doctor, right? If the doctor's patient says, schedule me for surgery on Friday, show me what that looks like. They don't say, okay, great. They start asking questions. So the first thing we want to understand is this serious? So when you start delving into the situation that you as a professional, you as the doctor need to diagnose the patient, are they excited to share that information with you because they're a professional too and they want to solve the problem? Or do they put up a wall and say, oh, well, we're not sharing that information. That would be unfair to you. We want all the vendors to go in blind and throw darts at the board. And I've been in that situation and I foolishly prepared a proposal. So don't do that, right? That means there's someone who has the information and it's not you. If they don't want to share what the real problem is, then they're blowing you off. And I would say, hey, it doesn't sound like this is the right kind of fit for you. That's totally okay. Let's both save a bunch of time. And I wish you all the best. And sometimes people will say, well hold on. Gosh, I wasn't expecting you to actually push back. Like, we really do need to solve this problem. And a lot of times they'll say, yeah, thanks. Okay, see you later. And you can both save a ton of time. So the things that we want to do is figure out, are they actually sharing the information we need to solve their problem? It's not just about creating the proposal. Like, we don't know if we can make them successful if they're not willing to share what's really happening, which is what we hopefully really want to do and what they really want. And then the other thing I would look at it as, they're sharing the information that we need. And then we have a meeting scheduled to review the proposal. So until you have those things, don't commit to writing one because they're not serious.
I love the fact that you're bringing this up because so many people just literally throw out pricing. They throw out this, they throw out that, right? And they just toss it out there and they're like, well, I hope they call me back, right? And the fact is, if they're not sharing information with you, they're holding back. I liken it to, how would you like to be in a marriage where somebody's not actually open to what's going on? Right. And, any type of personal relationship, we probably would get suspicious. Like, hey, why aren't we talking about X, Y, Z? It's kind of important to the relationship. But when it comes to a business context, a lot of sales professionals, consultants, coaches, B2B sales people, whatever, I've seen CEOs and owners do this of companies where they just go, oh yeah, okay, we'll get that to you, tomorrow morning, you'll have that on your desk. And the reality is, I'm like, why? Right? Like when you're saying it. So I remember one time I actually said to somebody, they go, yeah, can you have this for me by tomorrow? And I go, no. and they did exactly what you said, Reuben. They were like, why? And I said, because I really don't sense that this is something you're committed to actually even doing with me. So why would I waste 20 minutes of my day taking care of? So why don't you just tell me no right now, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And believe it or not, they inked the deal with me. And so I think you're bringing up a huge point of what it takes to actually win business, which is, we as people who are on the selling side, we don't work for those other people. We're trying to work with them. And we've got to come in to solve their problems, just like the doctor would come in to solve the problems. So we got to be able to position ourselves equal to, anyways, their status. Mm-hmm. And why do you think people don't do that? I mean, is it just training from birth? What could it be? That the sales channel comes in, they go, oh my God, it's I don't know, Oprah Winfrey. I can't talk to Oprah like she's a normal person, right? Whatever it might be.
I think a lot of people, when they start their careers in sales, they tend to be younger. They're excited to send a proposal to Oprah, whomever it is that they perceive is of higher status in the business world than they are. And I think we also generally, hopefully, we want to please people. We want to help people. And it takes a little bit of getting over ourselves to realize that the way we do that genuinely is to act like the doctor, not like the secretary who's going to hand over a document upon request. And I think it goes to what you're saying. people often in these situations, they don't actually send a proposal. They say they send a proposal and they check the box and they move the deal to the proposal stage in the Salesforce pipeline or whatever. So they feel good in their sales. Oh, we're in the proposal phase now. Yeah, we're looking good, right? It feels like they're doing something, but they're really sending a brochure with numbers on it. And then they complain, all the person's doing is looking at the price. They skipped over my proposal and just looked at the numbers. No, you didn't send them a proposal. You sent them a bunch of brochureware that they don't care about.
Yeah.
The only thing they have to go on is the price.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And I made that mistake in my career as well.
Me too.
Right. I remember I used to have a 16-page proposal, and it was when I had the telecommunications auditing and consulting company. And I would bring that thing in there. It was chock full of good information, but they always just went to the last page and they looked at the last page and they said, okay, what am I saving here? What is the process? We'll talk about it later. And what's the investment, right? They would just drop right down. That was my fault, not their fault, because I didn't educate them on what should be in the proposal and what they should be queuing in on. And so they just naturally drop right to the bottom line, right? And so that was me commoditizing my own value. And even though I would get a pretty high percentage of wins, it was still, I could have got a better percentage of wins if I had educated people. And I think one of the things on educating people is what, like you said earlier, what are the next steps? You don't send a proposal without next steps. And that's brilliant, because too many people don't even think about that. And if they think about it, I don't even think they have the courage to ask it, some of these people. So how do you build that into the process, whether you have the courage or not? And it's just like, it's mandatory that it just happens.
Well, I think a couple things. One, don't think of it as, I think sometimes we sort of have this notion that there's a battle between the salesperson or whoever is doing the selling and the prospect, and they're negotiating and fighting and trying to get the upper hand and all that. And I've been in sales cycles like that, and they're awful. I don't like them. Instead, right, hopefully you're not battling with your doctor, for example. You're trying to collaborate to solve a problem. And when you look at this, you're the professional. The doctor is the professional. They tell you what needs to happen. You need to not eat the day before. You need to do this. You need to do that. And they're not doing it because they want to be a jerk to you. They're doing it so that you can actually get the results that you need. So if you're going to do this project with somebody who's serious about doing the project, you guys need to sit down and review the proposal together and make sure that it says what you want. And if there's little changes you need to make, you can make them so you can get to the project, right? It's not about me trying to like outwit the prospect. It's about me trying to help them. And I think that mindset for me was really powerful, because that's what I'm here for. I'm an engineer, right? I want to solve problems for people. I don't want to do sales stuff. And so when I thought of it that way, I would get kind of awkward and weird. When I think of it as, this is what I need to do to help this person, or figure out that I need to send them somewhere else, which is also an acceptable outcome, then I can do it naturally and easily. So whatever you need to do, whatever you need to think about to make that happen, just do that and say, okay, when someone asks you for the proposal, first of all, you should have a proposal template that lays out what information you need. And if you have the information in there, then you can populate the template with a really compelling proposal. And if you don't, you might say, hey, Doug, really excited about what we've talked about so far, but I need to know, when is that person coming back from vacation? Because it seems like they're an important part of making this project successful. And you mentioned they're out, and how we're going to hit the timeline and so on. Then you can craft a story, right? A proposal is a story, not a brochure. And it stars the hero is the buyer, not the seller. That's the big mistake we make, right? We tend to send a brochure that's all about us, instead of here's the story of how the buyer is presented with their obstacle, overcomes the obstacle with our help, and gets all these great benefits. Then you schedule the meeting to review it, which hopefully is just them saying, yep, great, you got it, let's do this thing, right? Or maybe there are further questions. And then you can actually just go jump into the work. And what I found is, going from like the 10-page brochureware proposal to the 3-page, here's the story of what's happening and how we're going to do this together. They love reading this. Right. They read every word, and you can sit there and just watch them read it, because it only takes a couple minutes, and then the value looks great. And they say, let's do this thing, and they sign it, and you're done. I
think that is absolutely essential, right? For them to have the shorter and the story. Like, I love what you just said, because it's about the buyer now, and the buyer is only interested, quite frankly, in what is in it for the buyer, right? So they don't care about, if you want to put a little tiny blurb of whatever you do, folks, that's fine. But, 3 lines, you know what I mean? Other than that, it's all about the buyer. And I think there's one piece to this that you hit on, but I don't think people got. And I want to bring that forth is it's got to be retellable. So your proposal has to be something that somebody can take to someone else and carry our own retellable story to that other person, because we're not always talking with the actual buyer. We should be, but we're not always. Sometimes we have to talk to some influencers or whatever it is to actually get the next meeting to get to the buyer. Even though, people say, no, you can always get to the buyer. It's not true. I mean, try to get to the president of the United States right now. You're going to go through some other people before you can actually get an appointment with the president of the United States. So, but if you could take that story and it could get to the president of the United States and they go, yeah, okay, that makes sense, you'll get to the president of the United States. Right?
Well, I think that's a great point. And I'm even going to flip it around a little bit further and say that retellability is so important, even if you are talking to the buyer, because the buyer will often want to ask folks on their team, does this make sense? And those people don't have all the context of the conversations that you've had with the buyer because you were so good at getting to the buyer, and they can't say yes, but they can say no. And so understanding who else is going to be involved in the process, what their concerns are, so that you can craft the story in a way that they say, oh, okay, well, when we connect the ERP to the Robotron 2000, we got to make sure the coupling still works or whatever it is, right? That the CEO doesn't even know about, but they're going to ask the guy who's responsible for that, hey, does this make sense? Is this going to work? Oh yeah, that sounds like they've got it all thought out. Great. Versus, they don't mention anything about that. Now we're worried.
It makes tons of sense. And the thing is, a lot of times people in the sales process don't think human resources can knock a sale out, or operations can knock a sale out. IT can knock a sale out. They all do. And so if we're not proposing what's in it for not just the buyer themselves, but looking at how it affects the overall company, that's exactly what happens, Reuben. You and I both know. I mean, I know it's never happened to you or myself. I mean, just never. But that's what will happen, right? And I remember sitting down one time with a guy who was actually he was the buyer, but he had to report to other people within the company, and the board was also going to be part of the knowledge base on this. And he literally said to me, he said, Doug, if this goes bad, you're going down in flames because I'm not taking the actual blame for this. And, and so people think, Reuben, when they hear yourself and people like us, that we've been seasoned in this a long time, that we don't go through these things, right? Like
that's how we're seasoned.
Yeah, exactly.
We're very well seasoned.
Bill Gates never heard no. It never happened.
Right.
Of course he did. Right. So so we're speaking with Mr. Reuben Swartz. Reuben, I'm going to try your company name because I always mess it up, as you know. So is it Mimiran?
There you go. We got it.
Woohoo, we got it. And you have an anti-CRM, which I thought was really cool. And I took a look at it. Do you have a proposal? I never asked you this, but is there a proposal process in this?
It's funny because that was actually the genesis of the whole thing. It was never intended to be a CRM. It was literally me saying, when that meeting that I've got scheduled with the buyer gets rescheduled, and then I'm in that phone loop of, hey, just wondering if you had any questions on my proposal, feeling like the boy trying to ask the girl to prom or something, like, do I call her again, or do I look too desperate, or, what I was like, that was the whole thing that drove me so nuts that I started building this thing. I was like, if I put my proposals in the cloud, I can at least know when someone's reading them. And I can do some other nice stuff too. But that was really the thing that was driving me nuts, because back then, if I didn't know when it was going to start, right? If like, oh, we got to start November 1st, and then the meeting gets rescheduled, and oh, I got sent to wherever, I'll be back in 2 weeks. I'll try to work on this on the plane kind of thing. And I'm like, do I need to have people there in November, or do I need to keep them billing over here? And I wasn't even thinking of it as like a sales thing. It was more just like how do I keep my sanity with my people? I can't control if they're going to sign the deal, but I can at least know if they've read it. So yeah, there's a bunch of proposal stuff in there that makes life a lot easier.
And when you have it templated out, ladies, gentlemen's, he, she, they, right? When you have it laid out in that capacity, it is so much faster and easier to actually do. And I used to handcraft my proposals over and over and over. And I'd spend an hour and a half, 2 hours, on a just a tiny proposal. And then when I started looking at like templatizing that, it was like, what's that? The Disney song, A Whole New World,
Right.
It was crazy. All right. So
I think
go ahead.
I just want to say one thing about that, because I think it's really important, because people are usually trying to, you can almost think of it as like a matrix, 2x2 matrix, where you've got a short period of time or a long amount of time per proposal. And you've got a generic one or a highly customized proposal. And people complain about spending too much time on proposals, and they complain that people aren't closing them, usually because they're too generic. And so this way, with the right templatizing and automation, you can actually sort of be in that upper right quadrant where you have a highly customized proposal that doesn't take you a long time to create.
And the more time you're not spending creating proposals, the more time you can spend prospecting and getting out there and doing other things. All right. So we got that. We got past all this. We got a second meeting already set up. Now we're going to send the proposal out. We send the proposal out. You jump on an airplane. You go to a couple of events. You're seeing clients all over the world, that type of thing, as a consultant can, or any sales professional. I mean, I was driving around in New Hampshire where I used to work for a company called Paytech Communications. And I was driving all over New Hampshire, and I was showing my kids. I'm like, well, that was my client. That was my client. That was my client. That was my client. And we're driving like 3 hours, right, around New Hampshire. And I'm up in the mountains, I'm on the seacoast, and they're like, Dad, how many miles a year did you put on your vehicle? And it's like, well, 35,000, that type of thing. They're like, what? And so we can get really busy when we're in our professional days, and we can forget things, right? So I have found follow-up to be one of the most important parts of this whole process.
Yes.
Or as they say in Canada, process. So how do you follow up with these things?
Well, I think the most important thing is to have that follow-up meeting scheduled, right, where you're going to review the proposal together. And what I've found is if you set this up well, you should have a good percentage of the time that meeting is just them reading, e-signing, and you're on your way. Not always, right? Sometimes that meeting will get rescheduled. Life happens. Sometimes they need to clarify a couple things and then go back to the IT person. Reuben added some details. Does this work? That kind of thing. And I think, you're a salesman par excellence. There's always a next step. And so if that meeting does not result in a signed deal, and it could be an in-person meeting, it could be remote, but always, preferably in person. Sometimes that's not possible. So I like to do it over Zoom. If you can't do Zoom, do it by phone. And if you're doing like an online proposal, you can just send the link right before the meeting, and they can read it. I've literally sat in a room with somebody. I have my laptop out, and we can make little tweaks as needed. But you're kind of doing it together. So if that doesn't happen, and they say, well, we still want to move forward, we just need to clarify XYZ, because another outcome is they could say, no, this is not for us.
Right.
And you decide that that's great. Let's not waste any more time. Well, when's the follow-up going to be scheduled? We're going to do that again. Now, the other trick is if you're doing this online, you've got that follow-up meeting scheduled, say for next Friday or whatever it is, but on Tuesday, you notice they're reading the proposal again. That might be a good time to reach out and just give them a call, see how the internal deliberations are going, et cetera, if there's anything else that you can do to help. And being able to make that contact while they're actually reading the proposal is like a superpower, because instead of leaving those voicemails like, hey, just wondering if you had any questions, and missing each other like ships in the night, you can actually have a good chance of actually having a conversation when they've got the proposal in front of them, and that's what they're thinking about.
Relevance, people. I'm sounding like a school teacher now, but the reality is, meaningful, relevant communication, right? And that's what you're saying that can happen. And when they're reading the proposal, obviously it's fresh on their mind at that moment, right? So
right.
It's you don't have to say I'm spying on you. I'm but it's one of those things that don't forget, everyone, that everyone else is busier than you are. That's always how I look at it, Reuben, because the people are really busy, right? And so they might read that proposal, have questions, and then sit it down. And then when you go to the next meeting, they're going to ask you those questions. But if you have contacted them while they had those questions, you could have cleared that up and maybe close the sale on that next meeting versus pushing it off to the next possible meeting that could happen again. And there's all these things that happen, right? In busy companies, especially, there could be coordination issues of the second meeting, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, Joe's on vacation for 2 weeks, so we got to wait for another month before we can set the appointment. In the meantime, somebody comes by and goes, hey, brother, I have this person that does exactly what you're looking for. And then competition gets in the game. So speed to close is very important. And I think it's of the utmost important if they can read when they have the proposals coming through. Like you said, just reach out and clarify these things. More engagement we get, we know the bigger the higher the trust, right? So as long as it's good engagement.
Yeah. And I think that's the important point. It's not like you're spying on them and trying to do the hard sell. You are trying to interact with another busy professional, trying to solve a problem for them with them. And busy professionals appreciate that. If that's how you're coming at it. If you're coming at it like I'm trying to trick you and close you, then they're not going to appreciate it.
Right.
And I still remember, like, that first time I sent a proposal through my system, the guy was like, hey, this looks pretty good, but can we make some changes? Because I called him up when I got the notification. And we had, we probably changed 5 words in the proposal. We agreed on exactly what it should say. So he said, send me a new version when you get the chance. And I was like, well, if you go back and look, I've already made those changes. And it was like exactly what you're saying. We spent 5 minutes to do 5 minutes of work instead of a month of back and forth where who knows what could go sideways.
Absolutely. Wow. Reuben, how do people get a hold of you? Like, I imagine people are sitting here on the other end going, my gosh, you know what? This guy's pretty smart. I think I need to talk to him about proposals. Maybe I'm a consultant. I'm a business owner. I could use proposal software. I could use this. How do they get a hold of you?
Sure. You can find me at mimiran.com, MIMIRAN.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I think there's actually a bunch of Reuben Swartzes, but I'm the one who's at Mimiran and Sales for Nerds. You can get my fill in the blank proposal template, which is what I developed over years of using the wrong templates and finally realizing that this was stupid and a waste of time. So this is literally the template that I use. And folks have seen great success with it. Whether or not you're using it in conjunction with a software, you can put it in Word if you want. You can grab that off the website. You can find my podcast at salesfornerds.io. We've got lots of incredible guests, including Doug. And in fact, if you're interested, I've got an online course on sales proposals that's currently 80% off on AppSumo. So you can find that there as well.
Oh, you held back on me, brother. You didn't tell me about this, the AppSumo thing.
Well, I'm not a good salesperson.
Yeah, it's like, heck, you aren't. So you wouldn't be here if you weren't a great salesperson. So, Reuben, thanks for being on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I'm really grateful you're here. I know people got a lot out of this. So again, let's stay in touch and come on back and do another episode together.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Doug.
Okay, so what did you learn about proposals? That you should just be flinging them out there and, hope for the best? No, right? Because you really want to set yourself up as a professional. You want to set yourself up to be an equal to the other individual that you're speaking with. You want to be able to be an expert. So you become an equal, and then you become an expert through education, right? You want to always have a second appointment set before you send a proposal. You want to make sure you're supposed to send the proposal, because if you just send the proposal like a rookie, then what they're going to do is they're going to take that rookie component of that. They're going to then put you into a bucket with, think about it as resumes, if you will. They get hundreds of resumes coming through the process. So as they have hundreds of resumes or thousands of resumes, they look through them, they go, bing, bing, bing. Oh, no, this one goes in the left bucket. This one goes in the right bucket, So one of the buckets is higher or lower, and you don't want to be in the higher, because if you're in the higher, that means there's 100 other proposals in there that they got. You want to be in the lower. Preferably, you want to be in the third bucket, which is, hey, one side, terrible, middle, could do. Oh, look, your proposal is the only one that stands out. That's what you're looking for. And that's the one you want to bring to the next level. Make sure it is retellable. So it goes up the chain or down the chain. It doesn't really matter, but make sure it's retellable. And again, if you don't have a software, get his proposal template, reach out, at least get something to cut your time doing proposals. Because if you have to do, say, 4 or 5 proposals a day, and each one of them is taking you an hour to do, well, that's 4 or 5 hours on top of your day, right? But if you can cut that down to 1 hour, well, there you go, right? You saved yourself 3 hours a day. It's pretty easy math. If you like this subject matter and you would like to hear some specific subject matter, let us know what it is, right? Maybe you would be the guest. Maybe someone else would be the guest, but you can reach out to us at youmatter, youmatter, at cosalesstrategies.com. And let us know what your idea is. We'll review it. We'll get back to you either way. We'll let you know, yeah, we could do an episode on this or we can't. If you love this episode or any of the episodes, please give it a 5-star review. And tell your friends. The more people that know about this, the more people that we can help. It amazes me on a consistent basis where people reach out to me and they go, my gosh, I heard this on this podcast that you did, and it just gave me another idea and it sort of changed my life around. And I really wasn't expecting it to do that. But, this positive thing happened out of it. We love to hear things like that. So that's why we keep doing this podcast again and again for the people out there. If you want help getting yourself, your sales team, getting them to the top 1% of earners in that industry globally in your area, then reach out to us. Or if you're a company that's looking for, experienced elite sales performers, the top 1%, and you want people like that on your team, reach out to us as well. You can reach out to me directly at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. Doug Brown 123 is LinkedIn, or just call the company 603-595-0303. Again, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast saying, go out and sell something, sell a lot of it, sell it profitably, do it honorably, play win-win, make someone happy, make yourself happy, and to your success.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. What is something that you learned that you could act on today? Don't forget to schedule it now, or it may never get forward momentum. If you find our content valuable, please leave a favorable review and let us know what you liked. Please also share this with others if the content will help them. For our show notes, other episodes, and more interesting content and resources, please visit ceosalesstrategiespodcast.com. See you soon, and to your continued success.